Good evening. Welcome to Reflections on East Granby. My name is Mike Malloy, and I'll be your host this evening. Our guest tonight is Richard F. Ferrari, 40-year-plus resident of East Granby. He was born on July 16th, 1944. He was born in Windsor Locks, Connecticut, and he'll be our guest this evening. Good evening, Rich.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. So you were born in Windsor Locks in 1944, so it was right at the end of the war.
Yep.
What are your earliest memories of growing up in Windsor Locks?
Well, I went to St. Mary's Catholic School.
Okay.
And I began there. Stayed back in first grade.
Okay.
And then, grew up in town and, went to Windsor Locks High School. Played, didn't play in any varsity sports or anything like that, but we did a little bit of football real football before it got to be soccer.
Okay, right.
And then
okay.
we were just making the transition then, and that was...
really play soccer back then, did they? Much? Regular soccer?
Well, they started.
Okay.
We had a guy named Sullivan who was actually a All-American, and who came in from, I guess, UConn, and that was his thing for soccer. So we started playing soccer.
Okay.
Which most of the guys didn't like to do because we like to play football in
right.
gym time.
It's more common sport.
Football.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that was that.
So you have brothers and sisters?
I have one brother, Larry, who's 7 years older than I am.
Okay.
So he lives down in Niantic.
Okay.
But we had a relatively small family, and just the four of us, my mother and father, and then my brother Larry and I lived
Where'd you live in Windsor Locks?
On South Center Street.
Okay.
I don't know of any real good landmarks, so it was just halfway down South Center and between there and the highway.
That's kind of the center of town in some way, geographical. Oh, you're a little south of the center.
We're a little south of the center.
Which would make sense.
Which would make sense. Walking distance from school, a lot of times we walked rather than take the bus.
Okay.
But we had that option then. We could do that.
Right.
What do you say about being a small town
What
like
do you,
Windsor
any
Locks,
early memories from Windsor Locks? I mean, what would you say your earliest memory? I always ask people that. Some people...
Well, I guess the earliest memory I ever had was playing with a truck at about 6 years old or 5 years old in the backyard. And other than that, but...
now, Windsor Locks was a pretty vibrant little town back then. It had the main street there. And
Well, it had one of the few single-side main streets in the country, as I understood it.
All across from
because we had Windsor Locks, and then of course you had the Route 5 goes through the town, Route 159 goes through the town.
Okay.
Then you had the canal and the railroad tracks, and then Montgomery was across the street. And so you always had the trains going through, but it was a one-sided main street.
Right.
Maybe three or four bars. The house, we had that fond memories, but back in the 60s, I think it was, they kind of knocked down the whole Windsor Locks, the whole center of Windsor Locks.
Urban renewal.
Urban renewal.
Yeah.
Which it was a mistake, but a lot of those buildings were because of a mill town, and a lot of them were old and ratty, and
they needed to go.
They needed this. They used to have something to do to make it more pleasant experience, but you couldn't at the time fix those buildings.
The funds
weren't there, and what they did was the community renewal thing, and then they basically knocked down the whole thing, which destroyed the whole center of town. So it has no real center now.
It really hasn't rebuilt that part of town ever since, has it?
No. It's nice enough, but still flavor of a late 19th century mill town.
I recently heard that they're trying to finally get that train station.
Yeah, train station.
That would be, well, if it goes, it goes, but that would be a center hub in the town.
I don't know what they'd use it for, though.
Yeah.
That's the only problem. I think they were talking about making a bar out of it, or a club or something like that.
But aren't they going to reopen a station there? Actually make it a stop?
Daniel Malloy is talking about running a high-speed rail through there, and which you can argue whether that's a good thing or not.
Yeah,
it's a 100-mile-an-hour train going up
as long as it stops.
that corridor. Not so sure, but they are talking about doing that. And well, we'll see what happens with that. But
okay, so you went to school in Windsor Locks.
Graduated Windsor Locks High School.
So you left the parochial school and went into...
Yes, I actually started in the public school, and then my mother sent me into the Catholic school, and then I went through 8 grades there.
Okay.
And then I went to the high school, which was down at the bottom of Center Street, and now that's the junior high, I guess, more than anything. But
okay, what was your just quickly? What was your impressions of going to school in Windsor Locks? Did you enjoy it?
Well, yeah, I enjoyed it. Just like any kid would. You had your close friends and the kids you hung out with, and you knew everybody. Not quite as much as you would in East Granby or with smaller communities, but Windsor Locks is a blue-collar town, still a blue-collar town, very democratic, very conservative, generally speaking. And so you got people that were, they conservative-minded, but still they vote Democrat in the Democratic policies.
That's where El Grasso came from.
Where El Grasso came from, I didn't know the Grassos, so that wasn't part of my... there, we just didn't know him.
She was a little older.
He was a little older, yeah.
Now you grew up in Windsor Locks in the 50s, basically. So you were you were the Leave It to Beaver generation, the old Main Street.
Yeah, I have to say my youth was very, very pleasant, and we didn't have the same issues that we had today. Right. Today it's the 24-hour news cycle and everything. It brings everything out. People a little more. We didn't have, for instance, we had maybe 1 or 2 black kids in the whole school system. Right. And probably no Hispanics at the time. Right. And so there wasn't that kind of pressure, But we lived in our own little world. And maybe it was not a good thing, but. But
it's what you
just
know.
The way we.
It's
just the way we grew up. Yeah, that's just the way we grew up.
Kids grow up where they are.
Yeah. It was kind of funny. It was. You go out and play, you go out to play, and you wouldn't come home all day. But you could hear your parents calling you from the field. Screaming bloody bird. So you go in, and
dinner time.
We never really had any problems. We did all the silly things kids do, but we never got in a lot of trouble.
It's good childhood.
Good childhood. Very good childhood.
Okay, so you grew up in Windsor Locks. You graduate high school. Where do you go?
I joined the Army. Just before I got out of high school, I joined the National Guard. So I was 18 when I got in the National Guard.
So like 1962?
1963.
Okay.
Yeah, and 63. And then I did my basic training, came back, and I worked at Bradley Bowl for a couple of years.
Okay.
And I can remember being at Bradley Bowl, and of course, you're doing.
People should understand bowling was huge back then.
It was. It was, and it's better now, better then than it is now.
Right.
But it's still not bad. I actually bowl in a league, so that's that's one thing. But so I worked as what they call a pin chaser, and that's kind of a small. You do small mechanical stuff, and you work. At night, doing the small repairs on the machines if they break down when people are bowling. So you do all of the small stuff. So I did that for a while, and of course you're working every night, and you're working week. Right. So here I am, I'm 19, 20 years old, and I say, I have no life. I'm working all the time. And it's not a lot of money. I mean, it was $1.50 an hour, I think I got. Right. Which at the time I thought it was pretty good, but there were no benefits or anything.
After a year or two, it wasn't enough giving up your whole life for.
No. So, and there was a friend of mine there who said, you ought to go back to school. Okay. And so I went back to the high school and talked to Mrs. Phillips, one of our guidance counselors. Okay. And even though I was out of high school, she saw me, and we talked about getting into college, and I couldn't really get into college because at the time, you remember, maybe you don't, but general courses, college courses, and business courses. Right. Well, of course, I took the general course. Right. And I didn't have enough college-based
credits.
Right.
You weren't headed in that direction, so it was,
Yeah. So anyway, so I couldn't do that. So they got me into what they call a business school,
okay.
and actually in Springfield, and I went there for 2 years.
Now, you said you joined the Army, right? At some point?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I did Fort Dix.
Okay.
And I did Columbia, South Carolina, which was Fort. I can't think of the name right now. Columbia.
Well, it was an Army base.
Yeah, it was an Army base. Anyway, we did that, and when I went in, we were a heavy weapons company.
Okay.
And I trained infantry. Of course, you do your basic training, and then you do advanced infantry training. And because I was National Guards, we drove trucks for the last 2 months.
Okay.
We drove everybody out to the field that needed to be out in the field. So it was kind of good duty, and a lot of KP. But and then when I got back, they turned us into an engineer company.
Okay.
So for most of my next 6 years, I drove dump trucks.
Okay.
We had a dump in Enfield.
So you were trained for the National Guard.
Yes.
Okay, so you went, you did your basic.
Yes.
Came back, and you were in the Army.
And then I'm in the Army National Guard out of Enfield.
This is the onset of the Vietnam War, though.
Yeah. Actually, it was. I actually got in before the problems started, and then we got a lot of guys coming in after a couple of years, and I think '69 was probably the worst year.
But you were never deployed in Vietnam?
No, we never were.
Wow.
We were put on what they call they gave us 72 drills. They changed us from 24 or 50 drills to 72 drills, advanced training or some such thing.
Okay.
And we were going a weekend a month, and then every other Wednesday night or something.
Was there ever an expectation that you were?
Yeah, there was. Somebody was talking about it, but we never got to that point where. The National Guard then is not the same as the National Guard today.
It was a little more independent.
These people are a little bit. They're better trained.
Okay.
And their training is more serious. I think that their training is more serious because they know they might be in Iraq or wherever.
Right.
And they really have to be soldiers. We didn't always have to be first-rate soldiers.
So back then it was more of a reserve as opposed to a standby, which it is more now.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So, well, we learned how to drive dump trucks, and we learned how to make roads, and we learned how to do lots of different things. And then just before I got out, they changed us to a combat engineers. Combat engineers, we worked on Bailey bridges, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And we did a little bit of infantry stuff too.
So you stayed in the reserve for 6 years?
6 years.
Okay.
6
so you
years.
did
I did not re-up, and when I did retire, it's not really retiring for 6 years, but when I did my term, I left as a Sergeant E5, three-striper.
Okay.
So I had a squad.
Did they use you for natural disaster like that? Was it?
The closest, no, we
That would have been the
didn't
Connecticut
have
National
anything.
Guard.
Yeah, Connecticut National Guard.
So you really were a reserve troop in case there was a major war.
In case there was a major problem, and we didn't really have any disasters, and the only thing that was close was, if you probably don't remember, you read these history books, there was a trial, or there was going to be a trial for Bobby Seale down in New Haven. He was one of the Gang of Eight or something like that, and that was quite a while ago.
Oh, so you guys, that's right.
And they kind of said they made us go to the armory and hang around the armory all day because they were afraid they were going to riot down there, and that was as close as we got.
Okay, so you didn't. Okay, yeah, there was very delineated roles.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
all right.
I'm not sure it would have been a good idea to send us there, but anyway.
So you had you were working at the Bolorama, and you decided to go back to school for business.
And then, so I went to Andover Institute of Business, which was in Springfield, and I graduated there. And I ended up working at the Aetna for, I started at the Aetna and worked at the Aetna for 24, almost 25 years.
That wasn't back then. I mean, you had your big employers. You had Aetna, and you had Travelers, and you had Pratt, and you had Hamilton, and the majority of people worked in those big and state employees.
Start to finish.
Yeah, it was a career.
That was where it was. It was a career.
So what did you do at the Aetna?
I was an underwriter. I started as a life underwriter, and then I was a health underwriter and a disability underwriter, and Well, at the time, I was super when they let me go.
Everybody hears the term underwriter. What does an underwriter do?
I'm the guy, or the underwriter is the person who reviews the application that you put in for insurance.
Okay.
And we review the medical, the financial, and other information, and to make sure you qualify.
So you're like the firewall.
Yeah, that's basically
Make sure
it.
all the data is
Yeah.
right. Okay.
So I had a very good experience with learning a lot of medical technology, a lot of medical stuff, because we dealt to get attending physician statements and find out about your medical history.
Okay.
So at certain things, if you got blood pressure or heart disorder, you either are not qualified for insurance, life insurance, or it requires a higher rate.
Okay, so you just had to make sure everything lined up.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did. That was your career.
That was basically my career, and at the time I left, and I was working with. I supervised. I had a unit, and we supervised about 15, 17 people of varying different educational backgrounds. And we had clerks, and we had people who were college graduates, underwriters, and that kind of stuff. And then I went through a downsizing. The first one, I went to the property casualty division and started to work on homeowners type insurance.
Okay.
In copy, but they never really let you write new copy. So you just get a book and you pull out the stuff and you change the numbers.
Yeah.
So that's when I did that for about 2 years, and then I could see the Aetna was backing away from the property casualty business, and that's kind of when I decided to. Now, at the same time, I had been involved in the local politics.
Okay, now where did you? Why don't we just get your wife into the picture here? Where did you meet? When did you get married?
I met Linda, and this is something else you probably wouldn't know about. Delisa's. There was a club in Hartford called Delisa's.
Okay.
And I met Linda one night after a retirement party. I met her and a girlfriend there, and then.
Okay.
And ever since then.
Where was she from?
She is from Stamford.
Okay.
She was working up here for a psychiatrist, Dr. Lewis Gold, and out of 4th Street in Hartford.
Okay.
And we went out together for a couple of years.
Oh,
and then,
okay. How old were you at that point?
When we got married, I think I was 27.
Okay, so
and she was 26.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so you it would have been 70.
Yeah,
that range, right? 1970 thereabouts.
1973, I think.
Okay,
it's in my ring.
I always get people in trouble.
I should have had him engraven on the outside.
Okay, it was a while ago.
But,
we'll leave it at that. Anyway, so you're
41 years.
So you're working at Aetna at that point. She's working as a receptionist in Hartford, and you're still living in Windsor Locks.
Yes.
Okay.
When we got married, we lived on Windsor Locks.
Okay, so you bought a house.
There. So we started looking for a house when we understood that she was pregnant with Michael.
Okay.
So we wanted to get a house. We looked in East Granby. We looked at a number of different places, but we found the one in East Granby, which is the house on Route 20.
Okay.
Where the railroad tracks are, just going towards Granby. There's a house on the left as you're going towards East Granby on Route 20.
I'm not picturing it, but
it's 240.
What number?
It was 246.
Okay, 246.
And it's the only house on that side of the street for a little bit, and close to the power lines.
Okay.
And we moved there. We're there for, I don't know how many years that we were there, but I don't know, 10 maybe.
Well, you grew up in Windsor Locks. So what was your first impression of East Granby? What was it more? Just that was rural, or was it what did you?
Well, it's more rural than East Granby, but it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't a big culture shock.
Okay.
It was mostly. We looked in Granby, we looked in East Granby, we looked in Suffield, and at the time, it just seemed like the East Granby one, which was we could afford a little bit more, and it was probably as far away from Hartford as I wanted to get.
For a commute.
For the commuting purposes, right. And that worked fine. And when we did that, and when we decided, when we had the 2 boys, it's not a big house, so it was getting a little tight in there. And when we started looking, we wanted to stay in East Granby.
Okay, so you had a son, Michael, and what was your other son's
Mark.
name? Mark. Okay.
Mark.
And what years were they born? 70.
Let's see. Michael must be. He'll be 40 years old in February. Was that 1972? 1973.
Okay. All right. So,
and Mark was 1977.
Okay. So they went to school in East Granby.
Yes.
Okay.
They both graduated.
What was your impression of the school system back then?
We liked the school system because of its size. You knew everybody.
Right.
And if you have kids,
yeah,
it's once you get into the school system, then you begin to know everybody.
That's the link. Yeah. I agree.
And then you know a lot of the parents, you know a lot of the teachers, you know all that kind of stuff. And frankly, once they get out of school,
okay,
you lose those connections.
It's a little different.
It is different, and there's no question about it. But we like the school system, and for the most part, we like the teachers. Most of the teachers, not everybody, but take what you get.
So you you moved to East Granby. Did you get at some point you got fairly involved? Had you already been involved with politics in Windsor Oaks?
No.
Okay, so you moved to East Granby. What was your first interaction with the civic?
The first thing I did, I figure I own property now, or the bank or somebody owns the property, but I'm living there anyway. And eventually I'm going to own it, so I figured I have to protect my interests to some degree.
Okay.
So we should get involved in local politics.
Right.
Now I'm a Republican, and so I went one night to the Republican Town Committee down like in August or something like that. I met Dave Barnes.
Okay.
And
former selectman.
He was town chairman for many years.
Okay.
Everything else, and then I got on the town committee, and it ended up I was on. Conservation and Inland Wetlands Commission. I was chairman of that.
Okay.
Then I was, of course, on the town committee, and I ended up as chairman of the town committee. And I was chairman for about 8 years during the Rothammer period.
Okay.
And Frank was, a classic first selectman type.
Yeah, we've had a lot of stories about Frank.
Frank was always good, and then a number of others. And we've been very fortunate at the town of East Granby that we've got some pretty good guys.
Yeah,
regarding.
Absolutely.
I mean, Jim's doing a great job.
Well, it's a 2-year term, so if you're not doing a good job,
hopefully you get kicked out.
Yeah, that's right, right.
But they generally, and you've been involved in politics, so you have to understand your constituency.
That's true.
And to a certain degree, so even if you're a liberal or conservative, you don't have everybody the same. So
what I find is when you're sitting on the board, the labels go out the window. It's the issue in front of you, and you never know who's going to come down on what side.
Right,
because
the stuff is
very specific.
It's very, very good. Yeah. Once the election's over, you kind of forget where you're Democrat, you're Republican. It doesn't really matter. You're doing what's best for the town and yourself. You have
from your perspective,
you have your self-interest that you have to do what's best for the town.
Correct. Yeah.
And so I think for the most part, most people understand that, and I know as a politician and local politician, I never try to tell people what to do on boards. Even if I didn't care what they were doing about what they were doing, or I think they were out of line or something like that, I just kind of stay away from it because that's the process.
It's right.
And that's got to work.
Democracy.
It's democracy plus they're involved in it. I'm not. Where do I get off?
You mean in terms of I see
the knowledge of the situation, right? And
I thought why would I on the board in your fellow board members? But I see what you're saying.
See, and I mean they discuss it and they talk about it, whatever, and they make their own decisions. They have to,
right?
And that works. For local communities, I think it works very well,
especially small ones.
Yeah. Especially the small ones, because generally all these people. You see them down at JG's or you see them wherever, and you enjoy. Most of the time you enjoy talking to people, and you never ask. Are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? I'm not going to talk to you. You don't do that
not unless you want to put a yard sign in your yard.
Yeah, well, that's different. I mean, that's a 2-month period that everybody says, okay, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, and that's all there is to it.
So you were on the Conservation Commission, you were on the town committee. At some point, you ran for state representative. What year was?
Well, that was in 1990.
Okay.
And I was going through the process of downsizing at the Aetna.
Okay.
Now, the insurance companies and the Aetna, I don't know about the others, but the insurance companies were very, very good about severance.
Okay.
And I had 20 years, so I had a pretty good cushion.
Okay.
Before I had to go out looking for a job, I was going to get paid. So I said, well, I had planned. I said, oh, gee, I'm going to run for office when I and all that stuff.
Right.
So I said, well, I got this time now. Why don't I try to do this?
Right.
And as it turned out, it turned out to be
so there was a vacancy?
Good decision. Well, that's fun. It worked. When do you remember Joel Gordis? You know Joel Gordis? No. Okay.
No.
Joel was.
I didn't move to East Granby until 2000.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, Joel. All right. Joel was a state representative. He came from Colebrook.
Okay.
And he's a Democrat, true blue Democrat.
Okay.
Pretty liberal.
Yep.
But people in Granby liked him.
Right. So he was from Granby.
Huh?
He was from Granby.
No, he was from Colebrook.
Oh.
But they liked him. We had Colebrook then.
Oh, yeah, you were throwing
district.
a different district. Okay,
Colebrook, Heartland, East Heartland, West Heartland,
okay.
Granby, New Hartford, and part of East Granby.
Okay.
It was all in the 61st district.
Changed so much.
62nd district.
Right.
Yeah, it changed every 10 years.
Right.
So I was going to run against him.
Okay.
Now, as I say, Joel, or like any other popular incumbent politician, you're going to have, and you've had your own, as a town chairman, you've had your own, you're hard to attract people to run against a popular incumbent. Or I don't know if I was popular, but I thought I was.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you'll take somebody.
Right.
Maybe that you wouldn't take under normal circumstances if you had an open seat.
Yeah, you try to fill the slots.
Right.
Yeah.
So you try to fill a slot, even though.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was there, and I was doing pretty well.
Yeah.
And the Granby folks liked me, and Granby being the biggest town in the district, and New Hartford and all that, everybody seemed to like me.
Okay.
All the delegates.
Okay.
Anyway.
Right.
And then about 2 weeks before the conventions, Joel decided he couldn't do it anymore. He needed to find a full-time job and do that.
So your Democratic
now it's
opponent
he dropped
left.
out. Now it's an open seat.
Okay.
Well, all of a sudden I'm not quite as popular as I was. So everybody who thought they might like to run.
Oh, yeah, no, I follow you, right.
And there was a fellow from Granby, and we all worked. Then the Granby delegation decided they wanted to support the guy from Granby.
Right.
And in politics, you can't. This is not personal; it's business.
No. The writing. Sometimes the writing's on the wall.
So I went through the process, and I managed of the 13 delegates that we had at the convention. 13, I think it was, and I got my percentage. I got 3, and that was my percentage.
In order to
run a primary.
Okay.
And I decided to run a primary.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And then
that's a little unusual in a small district.
Yes.
In a rural district. Yeah.
Well, so I mean, I did put a lot of work into it.
Yeah.
And I said,
committed.
well, geez. So as it turned out, I won the primary.
Okay.
And I was running against a young guy who was married, no children. A veteran, and a UConn law student.
In the primary?
This is...
Oh, now you're in the general.
Now I'm in the general.
Yeah.
And the general, as it turned out, here I'm a 47-year-old, sort of grandish guy with 2 kids in the public school system and all the rest of that, in a business community, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you have the poor kid who's unknown and so on. I won the election.
Yeah. Well, it also tends to be a Republican district.
Well, it did.
It fluctuates now.
It fluctuates now.
Yeah.
But I guess it just turned out that people looked at me and said I had a little bit more experience.
And you were a good candidate, evidently.
So, and I was, and I thought I was a decent.
Diminish what you did, you won.
And I won. And that was history. And then just that, it was funny. After I won the election, that's when I got my walk-in papers from the Aetna.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So you had something to fill in your time.
So I had that.
Now, did you work as a full-time legislator?
I did.
Okay, so you were able to.
So we were able to swing that, and I would say that I never trade the experience.
Right. Okay.
I mean, it's a totally different world, but it was a thing I wasn't sure that I could do it because it was, well, it requires you to speak before people. It requires you to get up in the legislature.
A lot of stuff you hadn't done, basically.
A lot of stuff that I hadn't done, and I wasn't really comfortable doing all that stuff.
Okay.
So, I mean, going door to door was a nightmare.
Yeah, it was tough.
It's never hard. It's never easy to do until once you get started. It's
then you can have fun
every time. Yeah, you can. And if after a while you get to the point where you don't mind talking to people,
right?
And then you listen, you talk, you listen, and so it turned out that for I was, if not unopposed, I wasn't opposed with the strongest of candidates.
What did you feel was the most? What was your most memorable moment in the legislature? I mean, there's probably quite a few.
Well, there was actually one of the times what's his name, Lech Wałęsa spoke before us.
Oh, from Poland.
From Poland,
yeah.
Actually spoke up there.
Okay.
That was kind of neat. And I actually met him a dinner that the YMCA had.
Okay.
And he was the guest speaker. I actually met him at that, which was nice.
Okay.
There's actually a lot of things. I worked for the first few years. Now, when you go to the legislature, you get put on committees.
Right.
And there's 26, 27, 28 committees.
Right.
There's more committees than there needs to be, but that's a different story. So I was on the Energy Committee.
Okay.
This is my first term. The Energy Committee, the Insurance and Real Estate Committee,
okay,
and the Appropriations Committee. Appropriations because it's where the money gets spent.
Right.
And it's good to be on that committee just to learn the process of how money gets spent and how it gets appropriated for things. The Insurance Committee because I had some background in insurance, so it was a little bit more comfortable for me. And the Energy Committee, just because I like the Energy Commission, the energy stuff and the engineering and the technical things. Right. And after my first term, I became ranking member of the Energy Committee and was ranking member. A ranking member means the ranking Republican or ranking minority member of the committee.
Would it be the one with the most seniority?
Of that committee, of that particular
caucus,
committee, of their caucus.
Right, okay.
So you have the Democrat House chair, you have the Democrat Senate chair,
right.
You have the Senate Republican ranking member, you have the Senate or the House Republican ranking member.
Right.
And you work in that office, and you work with the leadership of the committee.
So you're supposed to be the conduit for most of the activity.
Yeah. And you let your members know what's going on, and so on and so forth. We worked first few years. After the first few years, we worked on the Telecommunications Act, which was trying to bring our telecommunications laws up to a current date.
Right.
And we had a couple of big committees that we worked on.
Is that the era where cable TV came in?
Well, we already had it.
Okay.
But you can't. States can't really regulate cable television. Everybody gets mad at you because you can't do much about it, but it's regulated by the federal government.
Right.
But as far as regular telecommunications, power, utilities, gas utilities,
which is now what PURA now they
but they got their direction from us.
You were the legislative branch,
right? Yeah, the DPUC, which is the Department of Public Utility Control. They would get their marching orders from us.
Right.
We would do the legislation. And most of the time, frankly, there wasn't a lot of politics. First of all, most legislators are not really interested in this stuff.
Right. Okay.
Because it's technical.
Okay.
And they're more than willing to take advice from you as the ranking member, and that you're getting a fair deal for whatever constituencies that express their concerns about it. And then the other one we worked on actually was the deregulation, electric restructuring.
Okay.
Deregulation, they called it, but it was never really deregulated. We never really deregulated the utility industry.
Yeah.
Now that took about 4 years to get through. That was there was a lot of hard work with that. Whether it worked out all right.
We could probably fill a whole show with your legislative experience.
that was.
But I have one question for you. What would you say? What was, if you were to give advice to a income legislator, regardless of their politics? What would that be? What would your biggest piece?
I would say, first of all, watch what other legislators are doing.
Okay.
Watch and learn.
Right.
And don't talk too much.
Shut up and listen.
Shut up and listen.
That's nothing wrong. It's good advice in life.
Sometimes in the legislature, if you have a session going on,
right.
There are people who get up. Now there was Wallenberg, and there was a fella from Rocky Hill. I can't think of his name. Italian guy. We'd have almost every 2 years. You'd have a death penalty debate.
Okay.
But when Wallenberg and I wish I could remember his name because he was so good. But it was the kind of debate you could sit and you listen. Right. And you listen and you say, whenever one of them got up, you could say, I agree with that.
Right.
And then the other guy would get up and say, God, I agree with that too.
Right.
And
so it was
it was a very in the terms they used. They were both lawyers, but they were very debating issues and things like that. Now, and you could sit riveted to your chair for an hour or 2 hours.
Okay.
You know. There are other people who get up. And you have to leave the room.
It's that painful
because it's either been said or it's repetitive or it's just not good to listen to.
Right.
And so you kind of walk out of the room and you go in the back room and
it's just not your cup of tea.
Return your phone calls. Remember, well, I don't want to make it sound like anybody's not listening because you always got it on the screen on the monitor and you can listen to it. But there are certain people who talk too much. They get up and they say things that you have to be careful when you do that because you don't want to get that reputation.
Right.
So that when, oh boy, Ferrari getting up, I'm out of here. I'm going to go get lunch or something. Yeah. So you
don't want to get pigeonholed by your own behavior.
Right.
Which is sensible. Well, okay, I'm going to get back to East Granby now because the clock is running. But a couple things, just a couple of questions that I ask, generic questions of every guest.
Sure.
What are the biggest changes in town?
Well, the biggest changes in town. Well, certainly the education system has gotten a lot more complex than it did when we were when my kids were younger. There's more. There seems to be more services. I think the library, having the library was a big change, which was a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. Having the ambulance association and the ambulance that was a big deal. I think that is a big deal that people, it's a resource that you don't always expect to use. But when you have to use it,
kind of like insurance. When you need it, you better have it.
It's there. It's suddenly there. In the fire department, I think that. Otherwise, I think we have most of us are, is involved. It's harder to get them involved. You know that. It's harder to get them because they got. First of all, you used to be. You had a lot of women who didn't work.
Who stayed home,
Who stayed home, who might have a little bit more time to do that. And they did get involved with the PTOs.
And then they dragged their husbands along for certain things.
And a lot of times, and not always dragged them.
Yeah,
but I know you're kidding. But nowadays, with both spouses working, it's very hard to get people that. Right. And you're talking, if you're looking at the Board of Education, you say, oh, you got 2 meetings a month. Well, you got 2 meetings a month plus 2 subcommittee meetings a month,
and they're long meetings.
And they're technical. They take a lot of effort, a lot of time. Board of Finance. We expect more out of these people than we used to,
right?
Because things are a lot more complicated than they used to be. Other than that, I wouldn't say there's been a lot of dramatic change.
So the general flavor is the same.
Even the population hasn't increased that much.
I don't think it ever will.
I hope not.
There's not really room for huge.
Well, there's not a lot.
Yeah.
That's right. It's like Windsor Locks is much developed. It's not going to get much bigger, you know. And I think East Granby's kind of the same way. We got some small places that you can, I think, develop, but not to a great extent.
No.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing at this point, especially if we're looking at with children.
You can manage what you have.
That's right.
It's more predictable, which is sensible.
Yeah.
But okay, if you were going to change one thing in town, what would that be? This is and it doesn't.
Well, I get a Republican selectman.
No,
no,
a competent one, right? Not just a Republican.
I know.
Seriously,
seriously.
More on a macro picture. What would you do? I mean, so I've had people come in here and say, "I'd like to see a amusement park." I'd like to this is not practical. I'm not going to be practical. I'd like to see a Chinese buffet.
Yeah.
Just what is it is there anything in town that you'd like to see that?
I don't think there's anything really monumental that needs to be done.
Okay.
I think most people come to East Granby because we are the way we are.
Yeah.
And I think, and I don't see it like a NIMBY or not in my backyard kind of a thing. I just see it as that's why we came here. That's why we'd like to keep it relatively.
There's a flavor.
There's a flavor of it. Sure. Yeah. You could say, okay, the village or whatever, but I'm not looking for a whole lot more development.
Yeah.
It's not all that hard to go to places you need to be that are relatively close by.
Right.
So, I mean, if I want to go to Walmart's, I'll go over to Windsor or I'll go to Avon.
Many people have said that they're happy with it the way it is. So that's not unusual.
Yeah. We're looking at that little piece of property off of Route 20, that kind of the V wedge that somebody wanted to put a gas station in.
It's approved for that.
Yeah. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But I'm not looking for, a major
super stop and shop.
None of that stuff.
Okay.
Because they're close by and we don't have to go that far to get there.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if the post office wasn't quite as diminished as it was. But we understand about what's going on at the post office.
Yeah, that's a bigger picture.
Yeah, that's a bigger picture.
We can't fund that locally.
Yeah. It was nice to be. It's nice to go to the post office and get your mail and all.
Right.
But all right, if they got to make a change, then they got to make a change.
Right. Is there? Okay, I'll end the show because we're.
Are we done?
The time is getting.
I told you I talk too much.
Yeah, it's okay. Is there any other story or any other thing that you'd want to share that we haven't touched on before I?
No, I can't think of anything. I'd have to say that we have felt very fortunate to live in East Granby and to know all the people that we know, and of course over the years I've met a lot of good people throughout the district.
Right.
But we still, if we were going to change houses, we'd probably still look to move in East.
Right.
I think we're really comfortable here, and
you've had a great life here.
It has been a good life.
Yeah.
And we're very fortunate.
Yeah.
And I'm not superstitious, but I'll take that too.
We'll have to have you on. We've got another show we do that it's more of a general topic show. We don't bring you in and talk about your legislative experience because you could probably fill.
Oh, that would be fun.
A couple shows with that. Yeah. We're always looking for segues here to kind of get on.
The legislature taught me so many different things about things that I never thought I'd need to know about.
Right.
And I think it did wonders for me. I mean, I've always felt like it's been the outside of my family, it's been the high point of my professional career.
I bet. It's got to be fascinating.
Yeah, it's a fascinating business. Sometimes very frustrating, but
Yeah, you don't always get
especially
what you
if you're in a minority. I'll tell you how
right.
frustrating it is.
I think no matter what party you're in or what your cause or issue is, you've always been on the side where you didn't get what you want, and that's part of the process.
That's part of the process.
And you learn from that.
Yeah,
so.
You learn from that.
Now, let me ask you one last question, which is a question I ask of every guest. What is the, if you were to give advice to young people growing up today, a young person, say a teenager just getting out of high school, what would that be?
Well, first thing I'd tell them to study engineering,
okay,
or something like that,
because
because I think some of the liberal arts courses don't prepare you for the real world of today,
or for jobs.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean, and that's what it's really all about.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you could do anything you want, but if your degree is in the arts or something like that, it's going to be all that much more, especially to stay in a state like Connecticut.
Right.
And we're not really good at retaining a lot of people because those jobs they don't start off with enough money.
Right.
I think engineering. Well, I hope that. I think engineer is like a lawyer to a certain degree. They teach them a thought process, and I think that helps them. And I know we got enough lawyers.
Yeah, right.
But I'm not sure that we have enough engineers. And
I agree.
Take the hard courses.
Yeah.
Take the math courses, the science courses, and those kind of courses. Those are the things that are going to get you ahead of it.
And it's something you can build on in an evolving work field.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not easy out there.
Yeah.
I don't envy a young person going into the job market today, even if it was a good job market.
Right.
I think that today is it's really difficult for them.
It's a challenge.
It's more challenging than when I was a kid back in the 60s.
Yeah.
69, 70.
If for no other reason, there's not a lot of fixed careers anymore. You don't go, you mentioned earlier, you don't go and work somewhere for 40 years, So.
If they look at you funny 5 years or more.
That's right. They think,
what's wrong with you?
Yeah, they think you can't get a job.
So, yeah.
Anyway, but it's been a pleasure having you in.
I appreciate that.
Like I said, I'd like to do something else in the future where we can sit down and talk.
I'd be more than happy to do it.
All right, Rich. Thank you very much.
More my pleasure.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us here this evening. This is Reflections on East Granby. Our guest tonight was Richard F. Ferrari, a 40-year resident of East Granby, and we want to thank him for coming in and joining us here tonight. Thank you.